that information. The text message came back, sounds great. Do you want FDA approval? Let's do it.
Wait, did you catch that? Joe Rogan just walked into the Oval Office and changed federal law with a single text message. This isn't just politics, it's a total shift in how we treat addiction in America. You need to see what happened behind these closed doors.
Quick. These drugs are illegal not because they're harmful, they're illegal because of the 1970 Controlled Substances Act that was passed by the Richard Nixon administration. They did it to target the civil rights movement and the anti-war movement. It's not because these drugs harm people. And for 56 years, we've lived under those terrible conditions. We're free of that now. We're free of that now. Thanks to all these people that we see next to me.
Look at the body language in the room. You've got the most influential podcaster in the world sitting with the president, bypassing the usual years of red tape. Rogan is explaining how 1970s laws were designed to target movements rather than protect health, and Trump's response was, "Let's do it." It's fascinating because this isn't the typical partisan shouting match we see on the news. It's a transactional businessman move. They're talking about ibogaine, a substance that reportedly has an 80% success rate for opiate addiction after just one dose. Think about the millions of families affected by the opiate crisis. This move could theoretically wipe out that addiction overnight if the research holds up. The fact that this happened at 9:30 p.m. with almost no initial media fanfare tells you how fast things are moving in Washington right now. You're seeing a new kind of alliance where expert friends are influencing high-level policy over a text message.
The main story here shows how absurd sanctuary cities have become. The man on the screen, Roman Amatitla, facing murder and arson charges. This man allegedly set a 3-story building in Queens on fire. 4 people were killed, including a 3-year-old girl. Cops say Amatitla sat back and watched people try to escape the burning property as he sipped a beer nearby and also watched 4 people die inside of it. He also urinated in front of the building as it burned. But because of New York's sanctuary policies, the Department of Corrections is evidently refusing to turn him over to the feds after DHS requested information on this man. So you can burn a building down.
This next part is actually hard to watch. Look at the guy on the screen, Roman Amatitla. The report says he allegedly set a 3-story building in Queens on fire. And then, get this, he just sat there. He sipped a beer and watched families try to escape the flames. 4 people didn't make it out, including a 3-year-old girl. But here is the real kicker. Because of local sanctuary policies, officials are reportedly hesitating to hand him over to federal authorities, despite his status. It's a total breakdown of common sense. Whether you're for or against certain border policies, seeing someone sip a beer while a building burns is a level of cold-bloodedness that transcends politics. It's a direct conflict between empathy-based policy and public safety. You can see the frustration in the reporting because this isn't an isolated incident. It's a systemic choice being made in one of the biggest cities in the world. It makes you wonder where the line is drawn when sanctuary starts protecting people who commit these kinds of atrocities.
We are monitoring the breaking news from the Middle East. Iran has reimposed restrictions on the Strait of Hormuz, with multiple ship captains now saying their vessels were fired upon this morning. Now, the country's Joint Military Command said, quote, control of the strait has returned to its previous state, quote, under strict management and control of the armed forces. It warned that it would continue to block transit as long as the U.S. blockade of Iranian ports remain in effect. Now, this news comes 4 days ahead of a ceasefire ending between the U.S. and Iran. President Trump already hinting at resuming attacks if that ceasefire, again, in 4 days, expires without a deal.
Now, keep an eye on the geopolitical map. While everyone was focused on the Oval Office, Iran just made a massive move by claiming the Strait of Hormuz is closed. This is a huge deal because a massive chunk of the world's oil passes through that tiny stretch of water. They're claiming strict management by their armed forces, and there are reports of vessels actually being fired upon. It's a high-stakes game of chicken. If the strait stays closed, global shipping costs skyrocket, and it forces a military response. Notice how the report mentions a ceasefire is about to expire in just 4 days. This feels like a pressure cooker situation, where Iran is trying to gain leverage before the clock runs out. The analyst later mentions that while they might claim the ocean is closed, they might not actually have the Navy to back it up. It's a mix of psychological warfare and real-world danger for every ship captain in those waters right now.
Outrageous if you arrest someone that's accused of these kinds of crimes. I mean, I was the Democratic lead on Lake and Riley bill. I mean, I joined Katie Britt. I just don't, deport every migrant that's engaged in any criminal behavior. I don't care what it is. I don't know why Democrats talk about, these people that like Lake and Riley or Miles Young in Missouri. That young boy, that 15-year-old boy that was why don't we talk about that? Yeah, yes, we could talk about Renee Good and Alex Preddy, as we should. That was tragic. But also, what about the kinds of tragedies killed on the other side? Now, I'm a one Democrat that agrees two things must be true. Secure our border, deport all the criminals.
You have to respect the shift happening here with Senator John Fetterman. He's traditionally been a solid party line guy, but look at how firm he is about deporting migrants who engage in criminal behavior. He's calling it basic common sense. He's even bringing up specific names like Lake and Riley, which usually only gets mentioned on one side of the aisle. It shows that the country over party sentiment is actually starting to leak into the mainstream. When a guy like Fetterman says, "I don't care what the crime is, deport them," it signals a massive vibe shift in the Senate. He's essentially calling out his own colleagues for being too understanding when people are being put in danger. It's rare to see a politician admit that their side might be failing on a specific issue, but Fetterman is leaning right into it. It's a reminder that real-world outcomes usually trump political theory when the stakes get this high for local communities. Things are changing fast, from the Oval Office to the city streets. Drop a comment below. Do you think the Rogan Alliance is the future of politics? See you in the next one.